Good evening. If you would, grab a Bible. Let's turn together to Isaiah chapter 36. Isaiah 36. We'll be spending all of our time in this part of the Old Testament, Isaiah 36 and 37, for our study tonight. Appreciate Miles and the things that he had to say. I was thinking about in the couple of years that I have been here now, getting to know Miles and those that are leaving. I think Miles has grown some since I have been here, because I know at one point I made an offhand comment here from the pulpit about young men who came back with mustaches from summer break, and he took that personally. And so I thought, man, he's grown a lot, because I don't think he takes everything I say personally now. But Miles is great. There are so many of our young people that are leaving us that are just tremendous, an asset to the kingdom, and you have been a blessing to us, as our brother prayed. And our hearts and our thoughts are with you as you leave us, but know that you always have a place here with us, and we are proud of who you are. Isaiah 36, I want to read here beginning in verse 4. It says, "And the Rabshakeh said to them, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the king of Assyria, On what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it, such as Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, We trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar?" I want to talk to you tonight about doubt. And I especially want to stress that this little section of Scripture gives us a great description of what doubt feels like. Doubt is a reality that probably all of us go through times of in our lives. Young people in particular, when they experience doubt, especially for the first time, they're caught off guard, off balance a little bit by the intensity of the emotions that doubt produces. It's important that we acknowledge that doubt is a universal thing, that from time to time we're all going to have either things that we doubt, statements, beliefs, things that we doubt about ourselves, things that we doubt about the world, things that we doubt about God, things that we doubt about the Bible. That we acknowledge that and say that is a reality. So when you experience that, you are not alone. But I also want to stress tonight that doubt is not strictly an intellectual problem. Sometimes we think that way, where we think, well, there are some things in the Bible that we have to reconcile and work through and talk about, and there is an intellectual piece to it. But this story shows me that one of the greatest efforts the devil makes toward making us doubt is about upsetting us emotionally. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what doubt feels like. And I want to use the voice of doubt, which in this section is the voice of the Assyrian official called the Rabshakeh. I hope you hear his tone. He is adversarial. He is angry. He is in their face. And he is questioning and causing them to question. His goal is to unsettle the people of Israel. And so when we feel doubt, we begin to take words like this. Maybe they're in our heads, or maybe they're in our world, and we begin to internalize them, and we begin to hear the voice of doubt and feel the emotions of doubt. So what I want to do is three things tonight. First, I want us to have an awareness of doubt so that when we encounter it in ourselves, we know what's happening. We know that this is not some strange thing that doesn't happen to anyone else. We don't feel like we're alone. We don't feel like something has gone horribly wrong. We understand where we are. Second, I want to help those who are right now, tonight, in a time of doubt. For whatever reason, you may have come to this building tonight uncertain about your spiritual life, uncertain about questions, upset about things you have observed in others, upset about arguments people have made at you. I want you to know that the Bible has answers for your doubts. And third, I want to impress on all of us the commonality of this process. We all go through it, and even though the specifics are all going to be different, there is a remarkably similar process. So if ever you engage with doubt, you need to know that you know lots of people, all the Christians you know, have been where you are. And so I want us to encourage each other for a few minutes tonight. Now let's set our context for this little story. In Isaiah 36, this is during the time of the Assyrian Empire's domination. And basically this empire had grown through this impressive military campaign noted for its brutality. Hezekiah is king of Judah, and Hezekiah has decided they are not going to pay tribute anymore to Assyria. He has rebelled. He has sought an alliance with Egypt instead of Assyria, as we'll see. So Sennacherib comes to put the clamps on. And on his way, he conquers Israel, the northern kingdom, and he takes them into captivity, and he begins one by one to take the cities of Judah until they are up at Jerusalem. And he sends the Rabshakeh to convince the people to change or to die. So I want to read, just beginning by reading this chapter, and then we'll talk about what doubt feels like from here. Verse 1. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. And there came out to him Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. And the Rabshakeh said to them, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the king, the great king of Assyria, On what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust, that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it, such as Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, We trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed? Saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, You shall worship before this altar? Come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses, if you are able on your part to set riders on them. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants, when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. Then Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah, within the hearing of the people who are on the wall. But the Rabshakeh said, Has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine? Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, Do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, The Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. For thus says the king of Assyria, Make your peace with me, and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, The Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of the Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? But they were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's command was, Do not answer him. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn, and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. I want you to hear in the taunts of the Rabshakeh what we're calling the voice of doubt. And I want you to hear what doubt feels like. First, I want you to hear in this that doubt feels like insecurity. See, his first goal is to make the people feel insecure. He wants to point out just how perilous their position is. Now, surely they knew this already. They can look outside the walls and see the army. They know what's about to happen. Anybody could see it. But there is something that is so awful about hearing someone point out all your insecurities, isn't there? To hear them get in your face and say, Just who do you think you are? And suddenly, everything you were afraid of comes to the fore. And you begin to say, You know what? He is right. How could we possibly stand against these people? Verse 4 of chapter 36, Say to Hezekiah, Thus says the king of Assyria, On what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you now trust, that you have rebelled against me? Who do you think you are to stand against Assyria? Who do you think is going to come help you? Who have you got riding in? Who are you going to tag team in to help you out here? Do you think that talk is going to do it? Can you talk your way out of this problem? Look at my army. Verse 6, Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it, such as Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. Egypt is not going to help you, and in fact, it's not clear, but it's possible at this time that Assyria had already defeated Egypt. So they are really out of options. But verse 7, he says, "But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar?" See, he thinks that Hezekiah has taken these high places down and that God may be angry about that. Now, he doesn't know much about God, but he does know enough about what's going on in the world to say he has tried some reforms, and perhaps there are some people who didn't like those reforms, even in Judah. So he is saying, well, do you think God's going to help you? You've been worshiping your God less. How do you think that's going to play out for you? And then, verse 10, "Moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it." Jehovah sent me, he says. Now, what's really interesting is that this is almost exactly what Isaiah himself prophesied back in chapter 10 of Isaiah, where he said God was going to send Assyria against his people. So maybe he even knew some of Isaiah's teaching. But just imagine what that would feel like. How would all of that make you feel? This is what we might call psychological warfare. I'm going to come and taunt and intimidate you with this giant army behind me and just hope you throw up the white flag and say, you're right, you win. Doubt feels like insecurity. This is the idea. We begin to question. Maybe the questioning comes from within us. Maybe the question comes from outside us. But we begin to question, just who am I and what can I do? Maybe we begin to question the things that we've always believed and accepted. Maybe those are things that our parents taught us. And so for the first time, someone gets in our face about it. And we say, you know what, I'm not sure about that. You know, that never did make sense to me. You know, I have seen that a lot of people don't believe that. You know what, maybe they're right. And so we suddenly feel like our position is not as strong as it was. We're not as certain as we used to be. And so we begin to feel a little unsettled, insecure. Maybe we wonder if we've been deluded. Maybe all those people we knew growing up, maybe all those people who taught us things, maybe what we originally believed, maybe that was all a lie. Maybe this is the real truth. Maybe this professor is the one who has the real answers. Maybe this book is the key. Maybe these people, this group, these intellectuals, maybe that's the one who's really going to show me what's true. And so what I begin to feel is a little uneasy because I feel like I am not in a secure place anymore. What was once bedrock now begins to shift. And the more we focus on our situation, the more we ask that question. The same question the Rabshakeh asks, just what am I relying on? Who am I going to lean on? What makes me think my life is safe or worthwhile? That my faith is in the right place? How can I know? And we begin to question. And so we become particularly vulnerable, especially the more we look out at a world that sounds like the Rabshakeh, taunting, poking, questioning, the more we begin to feel insecure and uncertain. Second, doubt feels like isolation. This is where insecurity leads. We begin to feel alone. We're on our own. Who can defend me? Who will provide for me? I guess it's up to me. I can't depend on people, that's for sure. Think about what Judah is thinking right now. Who are they going to depend on? And then there's even that question, well, can I really depend on God? Because, after all, God may just say no. Think about all the other cities of Judah that have already been conquered. So why would God answer us now? Can we even depend on God? Who can we depend on? We feel alone. So maybe I just need to worry about saving my own skin. And so the Rabshakeh offers that. In verse 14 of the text, Isaiah 36 and verse 14, thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. The city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Save yourselves, he says. This is your only hope. Nobody else is coming. There's not going to be a hero coming through the door. It's you or death. So why not save yourself? He also makes some just outlandish promises, by the way. Everybody will have their own trees and vineyards, and you'll go to this awesome land. The history of the Assyrians and their captivity practices is just notoriously brutal, even for the ancient world. This is not going to end pretty for them. But that's not really what he's after. He is trying to convince them, not with truth, but he is trying to make them feel like if you're going to get out of this alive, it will only be because you're acting on your own. You are isolated. Verse 18. Beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? What God can save you? Which of the other gods did this? Whose God helps them? You see, this is not about gods. This is about a bigger, better army and you all alone. What are you going to do? And so they feel alone, like they have no hope. This idea is a bit like predator hunting in the wild and isolating a weak or slower member away from the pack so that they're easier to track down and kill. There's strength in numbers. Sometimes numbers even help hide our weaknesses. But there is no strength in isolation. We are all alone. You see, we take tremendous strength from each other as disciples of Jesus. We reassert and reaffirm that some things are really true, that we go through ups and downs in our spiritual lives, and we're there to balance each other out, to pick each other up, to bear one another's burdens. This is what we do. But one of Satan's most powerful and effective devices is to make us feel isolated from our brothers and sisters. We can do it sitting in a building full of people like we are tonight, where I feel like I'm just not a part of this. These people just don't get me. I'm just on my own. And it's not just that when we drift from one another that we lose our strength. It's also that doubt grows more freely. We feel alone. And so what I want you to do is when you begin to see the growth of isolation in your own heart and spirit, hear the voice of Satan in it. It is Satan who is saying to us, no one understands. Nobody gets it. There's nobody like me. I'm all alone. Nobody is like me. Nobody is sincere. None of these people are really thinking. They're all just going through rote motions. None of these people are really trying to serve the Lord. Or maybe these people have bad hearts. Or maybe, I've heard this on many occasions, these people don't have real problems. Or maybe these people are more trouble than they're worth. But whatever it is, and there are a myriad other ways that Satan sows discord within God's people, when you begin to isolate, doubt will grow. Who will you lean on? And so it will be Satan then who will insist that there's no one you can trust in your time of need, especially not a God who is a little more unpredictable than we might like. Instead, when we begin to isolate ourselves, we shouldn't be surprised to see doubt grow. This is often what doubt feels like. It feels like isolation. Third, doubt feels like inability. You see, when we feel alone, we know we're in trouble because if we're alone, we're limited by our own ability. It's just us. And we all know what we can do and what we cannot do. So I want you to notice how the Rabshakeh tries to instill this sense of inability in the people of Judah. Look in verse 5, back of chapter 36 and verse 5. It says, "Do you think that mere words and strategy are power for war? In whom do you now trust that you have rebelled against me? Surely you're not trusting your own strength, right? Surely not." Verse 8, "Come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you are able on your part to set riders on them. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen?" He says, guys, I've got more horses than you have men. We could take the sorriest one of our captains and rout you. What do you think you're going to do? And I hope you hear the mocking tone because this is the tone I really want to communicate tonight. Do you really think you're going to be able to stand? Verse 14. "Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you." Your king stinks. Won't work. Not going to happen. So what are you going to do? Now, it seems to me that all of us deep down have a real awareness, familiarity with our own inadequacy. I think we all know that we're unequal to a lot of the tasks that we have. We know our flaws. We remember our mistakes. We know our limitations, whether those are spiritual limitations or intellectual or physical limitations. We know how powerless we are. And the truth is, there are so many situations we encounter in life that we know we can't handle on our own. We just can't do it. We don't have the depth to do it. We don't have the wisdom to do it. Sometimes we don't have the money to do it. So whether we're talking about heartaches, whether we're talking about we just don't know what to say at the right moment, whether we say we just don't have the skill, what we know is we're unable to do certain things. Now, I want you to know that on one level, that is fine. That is just vital Bible teaching. That is being poor in spirit. That is all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That is Paul saying, who is sufficient for these things? The problem is, when we begin to doubt, when we focus on our inability, and we are isolated from others, we begin to question whether God is even there to help. Doubt progresses. And so what happens is what should be humility turns to despair. Instead of me saying, you know what, I can't do this on my own, I say, you know what, I can't do it. I give up. I quit. Maybe that's the intellectual side, and you say, well, I just can't figure this out. I just can't make it work. I just don't understand how Genesis 1 can be true and modern science can be true. I just can't see it. So we say, you know what, that's it. I'm out. Or maybe it's the emotional processing of some hardship. Sometimes we go through things and we say things like, I just can't get over it. Someone does something to me and I say, I just can't forgive. I just don't understand. And see, what our inability is telling us is, so that's it. Give up. You can't do it. Not capable. Maybe it's a struggle with sin. And so we come face to face with the fact that time and again, we keep succumbing to the same sin. And what do we begin to say? No hope for me. I just can't do it. I hope you hear in doubt. Doubt is so close to where we should be about this. We are unable. There are things we can't do on our own. We need God's help. But if all we hear is the voice of doubt, all we focus on is our lack, then we begin to get further and further from trusting God. And finally, doubt feels like impossibility. Some things are just too hard to believe. And so we begin to doubt them. It seems like too much. It seems like it is impossible. So the devil attacks here the sense that God often does unlikely things that are unexpected, unpredictable, and says if God would do that, it would be so far-fetched that it's not really possible. You see, it's difficult to imagine the world working in a different way than we've always seen the world work. For God to act in this situation seems impossible. That's the voice of doubt. Look in verse 18 of Isaiah 36. In verse 18, beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? What happens in these situations? You don't have to be an intense student of history to figure out that question, do you? Big army, big empire, bad king, they're going to mow everybody down. And so they line that army up outside Jerusalem. What's about to happen? We all know. The big guys beat the little guys. This is the way the world works, right? There is a sort of brutal logic in it. This is the way the world works. For the world to work a different way is impossible. Doesn't happen. It's the same logic that says there are no miracles in the world. The world is going to work the same way all the time, beginning to end. It's the same logic that says God doesn't intervene. And to think that God would set aside something like that we have observed time and time again, the big guy beats the little guy. It seems far-fetched. We might even say, yeah, well, God did that. God did split the Red Sea that one time. There was that one time where the little guy beat the big guy, right? David and Goliath. Yeah, that happened. But, really, do things like that happen today? Would God really help us like that? Would God really intervene in some way today? And so we begin to say, no. And all the statements in the Bible about nothing will be impossible with God, all of those seem a little, fanciful and far-fetched. In chapter 37, look in chapter 37 in verse 6. I want you to notice when God responds. Isaiah said to them, say to your master, thus says the Lord, do not be afraid because of the words you have heard, with which the young men of the king of Assyria have reviled me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, so that he will hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. Even God's response is a little hard to believe, isn't it? To think that suddenly God's just going to take this guy out? That's strange. I think everyone sitting there would say, well, that sounds great, but I'll believe it when I see it. It's the kind of way we work. There is also a commonality here that I see between this story and the way doubt feels. That is, I believe a lot of Christians begin to doubt because they feel intimidated. There are a lot of people in our world who are very educated and very intelligent and extremely aggressive. And they argue with tremendous ferocity and anger. They blast Christians and what we believe. And they write books with titles like God is Not Good and The God Delusion, which are just intended to denigrate our faith. They talk about the Bible with this vicious, bitter, biting tone. They try to argue that somehow God is evil, which I'm not sure what the definition there is. I don't know how that works. And they can ridicule with the best of them. They can yell louder and talk faster than I can. They have a lot more letters at the end of their names. And I'll tell you, it's intimidating. What this passage shows me is that's nothing new. That's how Satan works. He argues from this sort of brutality and threat and harshness, and I hear that in the Rabshakeh. It's not the impossibility, it's the sense of impossibility, the way it sounds in their mouths. And that is how doubt begins to feel. It's me against them. I don't have an answer for them. God seems far away. That's what doubt feels like. It feels like insecurity. It feels like isolation. It feels like inability. It feels like impossibility. Now, if we're going to end there, that is a downer of a sermon. So I don't want to end there. The good news is the story gets better. Look in chapter 37. I've got to tell you that this story does not end in doubt. It ends in tremendous faith. In Isaiah 37 and verse 1, it says, as soon as King Hezekiah heard it. By the way, how do you think Hezekiah feels? He's probably second-guessing, should we have rebelled against them? Okay, there's that. He's probably thinking, man, these guys got a lot of bad things to say about me, and I also know I can't do anything about this. I'm not powerful enough to defeat Assyria on my own. Verse 1, as soon as King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord. Verse 4, he says, it may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to mock the living God, and will rebuke the words that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left. And so verse 14, it says, Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers. This is the writing out of the Rabshakeh's message. And he read it. And Hezekiah went up to the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God, you alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Incline your ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see, and hear all the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock the living God. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations in their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the works of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they were destroyed. So now, O Lord our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are the Lord. This is a beautiful picture to me. Hezekiah going into the house of the Lord, the temple, spreading out this letter before God. Hey, God, have you heard what he said? I know you heard. He is upset, he is prayerful, and he turns to God. The beauty is that even the harshest of doubt sowers, like the Rabshakeh, there is a time where they shut up. And there is a time where we can retreat from their voice. And we can lay these thoughts before our God. And we can ask for his help. We can remember that God is concerned about his people, and that God is concerned about what people say about him. Probably far more concerned about that than I am, about his own reputation. And that God hears the cry of his people, and that God is near to his people, and that God acts even though it is almost never in predictable ways. In particular, I want you to see that Hezekiah has these same emotions we've discussed, and he pours them out to God. Look again at verse 18 of chapter 37. 37:18. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations and their lands. Think about that. He says, look, that's true. They did. They have just cut a swath through the world. Things look terrible. They have laid everyone waste. Verse 19, they have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the works of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they were destroyed. So now, O Lord our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are the Lord. See, they weren't gods. So I see what's happened, but I know a difference, that you are not wood and stone, that you are the living God. It reminds me of Jehoshaphat's prayer that Reagan read for us earlier tonight. O our God, will you not execute judgment on them, for we are powerless. Notice how he acknowledges that. I'm not able in myself. We are powerless against this great horde that is coming against us. We do not know what to do. How much more weak can you get? I don't know. I can't do it. But our eyes are on you. See, instead of this being just doubt, instead of him just throwing up the white flag, he says, no, I trust my God. And I will put my eyes on him, lay it out before him, and trust that he's going to take care of us. See, these great things, these great kings of the Bible show us something powerfully important, that we feel these things too, just like they did. And yet we can respond by giving these things to God. We don't have to give up. We can allow the emotions of doubt to fuel our path back to God. Say, God, I don't know what to do. I can't fix it. I don't know how to fix it, but my eyes are on you. I think it takes all the more courage to do that when there's an army sitting outside your city. How much more can we do that with the doubts that we feel? I want to say a word to our young people about this. I want to assure you that as you grow into maturity, you will experience these feelings. Your faith will be tested. And Satan will be coming for you. Your friends will challenge you. There will be moral challenges for you. There will be intellectual challenges for you. You will doubt. And I want to encourage you not to be surprised when that happens. It's going to happen. It may surprise you, the intensity of the feelings that we've described. But I want to stress that other people understand and have experienced it as well. I want to encourage you, if you are in a season of doubt, to reach out to people with the right spiritual priorities in those moments. I look back on times of doubt that I have gone through, and in my times of worst doubt, I was the most isolated. And I cut myself off from people who might be able to speak wisdom and truth into my life. And I was the poorer for it. I have regrets about those times. I want to encourage you to reach out to people who can help you and understand. I want to encourage you to take those feelings like Hezekiah does to the throne of God and lay them at God's feet. And I want to encourage you, don't ever be intimidated by someone getting in your face about God and his word. People are going to get mad at God and try to knock you off your moorings. Don't let it happen. There will be a time when all those voices are silenced and you can, in calmness, take those things before God and make right choices about your faith. You may not know the ending of this story. But the end of the story is awesome too, where suddenly, after this prayer, God answers in a resounding way. And they go out and they find that the angel of the Lord has slain 185,000 Assyrians. In the historical record of the Assyrians, it actually says that they had to retreat and go back home. Something happened. God responded because his people didn't give in to doubt. Of course, they had an incredible leader who showed them this is the path. But I love the fact that God wasn't limited by the numbers that were against him. Instead, he came through for his people. So I want to stress to you that doubt will be a remarkable challenge, but it doesn't have to be the end of faith. Instead, it can be the way by which we grow into stronger faith. When you emerge on the other side of doubt, you know exactly what you believe and why. You've been through a fire. Just like Hezekiah, do you think after this victory, he's ever going to have these same feelings again? He's going to be strong because he knows what he believes. He has trusted in his God. And so in the same way, when we emerge from doubt, we will be stronger and ready to tackle whatever is next in our spiritual growth. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope that this story has helped you. And if you have questions about some of these things, I encourage you to talk with me about them. I want to say one more thing on this. What I believe is one of the most important things in the issue of doubt is that everyone in our group knows it is always okay to ask questions. We want to hear your questions. Questions are how we grow. We're not intimidated by questions. Questions don't mean something is going wrong. Questions mean people are interested and engaged and they want to learn. So, ask your questions. Ask them to people who are going to be good spiritual resources for you. And let's grow together, shore up our faith together, and draw closer to God. Thanks for your attention. This is the time in our service where we offer the invitation, and we just want anyone here who needs to respond in some way to the gospel call, whether that is to, for the first time, become a Christian, be baptized into Christ tonight, or whether that's to let us know about some need or some problem in your life that we can pray for you and with you about. Whatever your need, please come to the front as we stand and sing to encourage.